Morning, everybody. How's everyone this morning? Sure, let me put my mask
You guys okay? Okay. I'm going to take a picture of you, if you don't mind. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. How about you two? Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Cheers. How about me?
on. Here you go. Richard,
Okay, everyone's good?
you good?
So what are your thoughts on the fact that they reached an agreement in principle?
I think it's great news for the people of Newfoundland and Labrador, and in particular, the men and women who work in this industry and on that platform. This is a new day, it's a bright day, and it's one that we should all be quite happy with.
Do you feel vindicated by not taking the equity stake?
Well, look, we're very happy that the partners came to an agreement first and foremost. We knew that we had a healthy offer on the table, and I'm quite proud of the minister for leading this with us through this and holding that line in the sand. We drew the line in the sand. We knew it was the right line to draw, and I think the partners respected that. This is our resource, and we need to make sure that we're making the right decisions for the people of the province.
The agreement in principle is not a guarantee. What needs to happen now in the interim to firmly secure the project?
Absolutely. It's an agreement in principle, which is normal kind of business practice when you reach an agreement, especially at a late juncture like this. My understanding in talking to Mr. Little from Suncor is that now they need to ratify this internally. So whether there's different stakeholders involved, obviously they need to take this to their board or to their shareholders, and hopefully we can see a sanction of an ALE formally by late August.
Suncor was talking about doing the refit in Spain. What are you doing to make sure they do the refit here?
Well, I mean, the refit, there's some work that has to happen here in Newfoundland and Labrador as a part of the MOU, but there is going to have to be some work that happens elsewhere in order to get this back in the field as fast as possible. We knew that. The unions knew that. Everybody knew that going into this.
The oil price is high, $74 a barrel. Do you think this deal might have happened without the $500 million in the deal?
Look, we negotiated this in good faith for quite some time. And so we're still prepared to honor that deal. The 200, let's be clear, the $200 million, the 205 that came from Ottawa and from with our help from Minister O'Regan has to be used in oil and gas. It has to be used to help the oil and gas industry through the downturn in the market. So it's not like we can take that $205 million and use it in hospitals or roads or policing services. It has to be used in oil and gas. This is a good, prudent expense of that money. With respect to the royalties, if this project doesn't go ahead, we get zero royalties. So this is a good deal for the people of the province. It's a very, as I said, and you heard me say many times, this is not about potential profitability. This is about risk management, and we manage the risk appropriately for the taxpayers of the province. Sorry, go ahead.
The $205 million, are we giving it, we're giving it to them for this interim period, or is it contingent on them moving forward?
Contingent on them moving forward. It's always been contingent on an ALE, moving forward.
So if they walk away from this deal?
The money stays with us.
Do they have to match the contribution like the past deals did?
My understanding is they do, yeah.
Okay, the full $205 million, how much are they matching?
They're matching, I believe what we signed the MOU on was the 175. We increased that, so I don't want to mislead you if it's the full 205, but certainly the 175 was the parameters of the MOU.
What guarantees have you been given based surrounding workers and jobs? Anything?
How so?
Sorry, in the interim period between now and September when a final decision is made, what happens to workers?
So I mean, some of the work is going to be done here and getting the FPSO ready for the asset life extension. And what can be done here needs to be done here. That's part of the terms of agreement in the MOU with respect to the 205. So, I mean, this is good news for workers. As I understand it, even though they're doing the ratification process internally amongst partners, they're still moving forward in a parallel process to start to hire people today or within the next weeks, as I understand it. So they're getting the asset ready for the life extension while they're still doing the corporate, the corporate framework that's required.
What role will Alarm play in the refit?
I mean, that's where, some of the refit will be done. We don't have the capacity here to refit this fully. I mean, that's the truth of it. And we all need to recognize that, and everyone does, I think. So as much work that can be done here will be done here, but we all have to know and realize that there is going to have to be work done based on our capacity elsewhere.
In Alarm, there is a lease until next March.
with this going into next year, Terra will probably be there longer than that. And now we're hearing more positive news about Beta Nord.
Absolutely.
Is the news of the last week or the last 48 hours shifted the feelings about alarm and what we might do with it in light of the PERT report?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a bigger discussion. You know, we've been very open about telling everybody that we're looking at all our assets in our portfolio, given the fiscal restraints of the province right now, and where the value is best placed. So, I mean, we haven't done a full analysis on the bull arm site in particular. It's ongoing, but been very open from day one. We're looking at everything, all our assets, to see where they're best vested right now.
Do you have a sense of what the timing could be? Like, if it is sanctioned in the fall, would they then aim to get that work done within the year and then be back?
That's my understanding, yeah. I mean, my understanding at very high level, of course, we're not at the table as a partner or as an equity holder, so we're not at that boardroom table, and nor do we need to be. But I think that they are positioning, if everything goes according to plan, to be, and again, I don't want to speak on behalf of the operator, but late next year is my understanding. But you can't hold me to that. That's kind of, you know, that would be a decision amongst the partners, and I'm sure that's what they're kind of working out now.
So they'll do the AOE starting through fall and winter?
That's my understanding. That's certainly what we've been led to believe. But again, we're not partners in this, nor should we be. But that's my understanding. That would be a corporate decision amongst the operators, or amongst the operator and the partners.
You said no to equity in this case. I guess when will you make, a firm policy decision on equity in general for the future, whether the government's going to keep buying it or sell its equity or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at that currently, discussing with OilCo. You know, our assets are best invested at this time. As I said here the other day, I mean, you know, you make investments. Sometimes you have to monetize investments, especially during tough financial times. It's great to have stock in Apple, but if you can't afford your car payment, then you need to look at divesting your investment in Apple to afford the things that you have. And that's kind of the position that this Treasury is in right now. And I think it's prudent and responsible to evaluate all our assets in the portfolio to see where they're best positioned right now. And oil, as I've been always open about, equity positions in oil is certainly something we're looking at. And I'm sure if you talked to premiers who were here before me, that they would say that that's a responsible approach. You invest in things so that you can get a return when you need it and when the value is high. And it seems like we're kind of hitting that unfortunate fulcrum right now.
Is there any news on when we might be setting up the future fund?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I'm very committed to the future fund, and Minister Cody and I have been talking about that. And Minister Parsons and I chatted about it last night. I mean, I don't want to leave this office and not have set up a future fund. So it's it's a high priority for me. And now, especially as we see the price of oil rise, I don't want to be remembered for the guy who didn't put the rainy day fund away and help deal with our debt. So I think, as hard as it is seeing prices go up, now is the challenging time. Now is the gut check time. Now is the time where leadership really stands up and says, okay, price of oil is going up, we can really spend this, or we can start paying down debt and putting away for a rainy day, or making wise investments. So the future fund is something that I've kind of committed to. I know Minister Cody has and Minister Parsons has. It will take time. I mean, you know, legislatively speaking and everything else to ensure that we're doing it responsibly. But conceptually, what the idea has been to make sure you're taking the volatile revenues or any divestiture of assets, putting them in a fund, and that fund can only be used to pay off debt, store away for a rainy day, or make responsible investments in technology or green transition.
What are you going to speak with Prime Minister Trudeau about later today?
We're looking forward to chatting with the Prime Minister this afternoon, of course. We're going to speak, you know, in broad terms, I suspect, on Muskrat Falls, on our recent budget, on the Green Report, the fiscal position of the province. And I'm looking forward to it. You know, it's always fun to talk to the Prime Minister. He's a good friend.
So, Premier, do you have any final thoughts on this? And we'll bring Minister Parsons in on what the day means for us.
Did someone cut off? Yeah.
Just can you talk about your cost-benefit analysis? When you look long-term at this, you're making what is essentially a $500 million investment. Once turnover is, you know, is completed, is the province going to be, you know, in the black on this investment? Sorry, maybe that's a bad way of...
Yeah, because it's not an investment,
It's not an
right?
investment, but it is, essentially, is it not?
No, it's not. There's very minimal risk to the Treasury, right? This 205, I can't spend it anywhere else. It has to be spent in oil and gas. So this is a project that was on life support. We've given them life support to get back out in the field now that the price of oil has gone back up, the markets have changed. It's a prudent, responsible expenditure of that money that was earmarked specifically for that industry. So that's not a risk. That's zero risk to the provincial treasury. With respect to the royalties, if we don't capitalize on that, then we get zero. And frankly, the Terra Nova project in particular had a different royalty regime than most. So we're bringing them in line with our current projects. And I think that's appropriate. And it's not uncommon in oil projects towards the end of life to have to, look at the royalty regime. But in particular, this one was quite lucrative for the province. And you could see as the value diminishes in the number of barrels of oil that are left, and you may have to reevaluate that. And we were prepared to do it, and we honored it. We did it in good faith, and have a great relationship with Suncor and the partners as a result.
Are you certain that this project would have been decommissioned if the government hadn't offered $500 million?
I mean, I can't speak in certainties. All I know is our line in the sand was this. What we have, as I've said, is this is not a question of profitability; it's a question of risk. The offer that we have on the table is essentially nothing is risk-free, but it's very minimal risk. Taking an equity piece is high risk, given our fiscal situation. So, to be able to say with certainty, no. But I think that we had the right deal, despite the external pressures, despite extensive pressures on the minister and I to take an equity piece, despite the cries from the opposition and everything else. We landed on the right deal. We looked them in the eye and said, this is it. We're not giving any more. This is our resource. We've done what we can, and we hope you develop it, and we hope you come to a partnership to do so. I think that line in the sand was ultimately what got this over the...
Where's the pressure to take equity stake coming from? Because I heard a number of people say that emails you got were questioning the $500 million. No one was arguing.
Well, I mean, I'm sure you paid attention to the House. There was massive pressure from the House to take equity stake. There was pressures from stakeholders to take equity stake. There was pressure from the industry in general, the supply chain. There was an extensive amount of pressure to take an equity stake to save this deal. But the minister and I reflected on all the levers ahead of us, and this was the right deal with minimum risk for the people of the province. And as I said, it's not like we're taking $500 million out of the healthcare expenditure and putting it into this particular project. This was 200 that had to be earmarked for oil and gas. We're not taking money from somewhere else. We're not robbing Peter to pay Paul. We're not rolling the dice. This is a good offer on the table, and there's no risk to us in the future. I mean, we don't. If something goes sideways, we just learned, of course, anything can happen in the global markets. We're not on the hook. We've got a healthy offer on the table, and I think that's helped the partners themselves come to an alignment and make the right decision for the people of the province, and frankly for them and their shareholders. I wish them all the best. They're great partners with the people of Newfoundland and Labrador, and I hope they make an incredible profit on this investment.
All right, thanks everybody. We're going to switch in Minister Parsons. All right.
What was this media haircut day?
So basically, the $500 million support from the province is there. I guess some people were wondering, okay, the province is basically given a value of $500 million. What is the province going to get in return out of this?
Well, again, to reiterate what the Premier said, we're spending $205 million from a federal fund earmarked for oil and gas. So again, it wasn't there to help with health care. It's not coming from the Treasury per se. Plus the fact that when you talk about the royalty relief, some is better than none. And we faced the possibility of nothing. We are going to get money back in royalty. We're going to get money back in taxation. We're going to get money back from the indirect jobs and the direct jobs that come from this. So I think it's a really good move for this province. We've minimized risk. We've protected the future. We've saved jobs, and we're using the resource in the best interest of the province. So we're pretty happy with what we were able to achieve through everybody's hard work and with the partners.
Do you have any details of what Suncor's matching? Is it the 175 or the 205?
I think, again, I will double check on that, but all of these so far have been matching contributions. So that's my expectation on this one as well. The ones prior to this were matching contributions from the participants, we'll say.
When exactly did you bump up the offer from 175 to 205?
It was in the last number of days. I can't give you a specific day. It wasn't recent, though. This has been the same offer that's been on the table now for weeks, right? So I can't give you the specific time, but it wasn't certainly last minute or anything like that. This was a part of the ongoing discussion.
Are you worried that this will set a precedent precedent for, you know, Synovus with West Wright Rose, that they'll come back to you and say, well, you gave Terra Nova this much more money, will you give us this much more money to keep it going?
Absolutely not. If anything, I think we're setting a precedent where the oil companies or any kind of company is going to come in and say, this is a government that sets their position and stands by it. And as the Premier said, we're not going to bend down. We're going to work with companies. So I am absolutely not worried about any negative precedent. I think we have set a positive precedent. And I think we've sent a message here that we will take a position, we will be firm, we will be fair, but when we draw the line is there.
What changed in those last minute negotiations between when you spoke to us yesterday and now?
I think you're going to have to talk to the companies. We were not, you know, again, we would be checking in with them. But I think, and again, I'll give a lot of credit to people like Steve Hogan with Suncor. I know the partners have been doing a lot of work over the last 2-3 longer days. So again, I haven't had that conversation yet as to what happened internally. I'm sure they'll get a chance to talk about it. If anything, you know, we communicated our position in writing. I've been told that it was very helpful to have that, and they appreciated the support. It did help with the negotiations, but as to what the substance was, I wasn't a part of that from the partnership perspective.
Was Steve on this file? Was Steve on this file?
Yes.
Who are the remaining partners now?
That hasn't been communicated. So the contact I had last night was with Suncor, who have indicated what they are doing in terms of upping their equity stake. But I do know that as to the remainder of the partnership, which is being restructured, I think they had to go through some internal work in terms of shareholders, boards. So I don't even know that yet. That's a part of, like, again, I'm trying not to get too far ahead, because even though this is a great day, there is work left to be done. There's paperwork left to be done. We think it's going to be a couple weeks. So that'll come in due course, but I don't have that knowledge to share at this point.
Can you provide any more detail?
I have nothing, again, besides what Equinor has said. I have nothing, just the contact I have with Suncor about what they're trying to accomplish here.
Can you provide any more detail on what exactly the hang-up was in getting us to this point?
You'd have to talk to the companies. Again, they were the ones that had to figure out the partnership structure. But I would point out, you know, I don't think this is an odd thing when we're talking about multi-billion-dollar projects, tied in with the fact that, you know, you're talking about public funds. It has a certain amount of tension with it. I think this is pretty normal in any kind of high stakes negotiation. Certainly we did everything we could to be supportive. I think that's been proven here now. But I don't think this is different than many other, you know, sort of complex deals where it takes time. Never gets done as fast as you want, but in the end, sticking to it means that you do come out with something positive.
By bumping up the figure to 205, that's all the money for operators from that fund, right? What's left is just service supply?
Basically, the remainder now goes to the, we call it the Olgira supply and service side. It's about 32 million. So yeah, this one takes basically the remainder of the pot.
What should we see from your office, like in the next couple of years, in the way of building a different industry, following the recommendations of the Green Report, so that these workers have somewhere to turn to when these projects end in a decade?
That's a great question, and one that we're talking about a lot, which is transition. And it's difficult at times because a lot of people want to make this black or white. They want to make this all or nothing. And the fact is that we think you can accomplish both, which is support your current industry, which everybody knows is undergoing transition, but we can continue to move forward. And so again, it's going to be a parallel path deal. I think we've signaled to the industry that we want to work with them. We signaled to the workers that we want to work with them, but there's a lot of work ongoing as it relates to where do we want to be in 10 years, 20 years, far past when any of us are going to be here. We do want to establish something that positions this province in a good way. We have amazing assets here. We just want to make sure that they're, you know, we want to make sure any deals, any work is done properly. Is that work done yet on our part? No, we're still in the listening, in the, you know, assessing phase. So there's a lot to come yet, but it's exciting. I'm excited. It's amazing that, you know, the opportunities that we have here. A lot of times when you're inside there, you know, it's negative, negative, negative. And when you're sitting in the office, surrounded by a bunch of people that are working really hard, surrounded by the Premier and the Minister, who, like, we're seeing there's a lot of positive here. Doesn't mean we don't have challenges, of course we do, but there's a hell of a lot to look forward to, and a lot of that sits within the department, and I'm really lucky to just be there and be a part of it.
What are the risks you're facing for decommissioning now with the royalty clawback.
Yep.
That's still coming in maybe a decade from now.
Yep.
Does it make sense to save to pay for that now, or to just borrow and pay for it then?
That's a question would probably be better posed to Minister Cody, but that's a consideration, obviously, that has to be kept in mind. Again, don't know what the figure is. There is a range there. We don't know what it is. But again, hopefully that's not something we have to deal with until a decade from now. But like anything, I do think we need to have a plan for it now that we've crossed this crucial stage.
Would that range be applicable to West White Rose when that's done, if West White Rose goes ahead and then it's done and decommissioned, is that same range?
Every project is the same like that. There is decommissioning, a royalty carryback that's associated. Every one of them, to my understanding, is the same, that there will be, again, they have costs which are able to be deducted against a royalty that they've already paid. So that's going to happen in just about every field. The big one here was obviously we're facing a decommissioning now, much sooner than anybody had anticipated. In this case, hopefully we can plan for the future. And again, because the companies already have this plan, that's budgeted in when they do these deals. So that wasn't a new risk to them. They had already known that they would be on the hook for decommissioning or abandonment costs. It was a new risk to us in terms of the greater, I guess, the greater concept of it.
A couple of days ago, you had said that there were outside interests, private interests interested in this project. Do you know if there are new partners now involved?
I have no idea. I can honestly say that I don't know what this new partnership looks like. I don't know who the partners are, what their interests are, what their percentages are. So I think that's what's got to be worked out. Obviously, we'll support how we can, but I think that's going to be a process that takes place quietly within the partnership, and will be revealed hopefully when all the paperwork is signed and done.
All right, we are getting up against it for time. Last question, Alex.
These companies, they know they have to pay for decommissioning, but they don't actually budget for it with figures in their quarterly results or reports. That's something you'd like
Some
to
do. Well, that's a good conversation. I don't have the answer for it. I think some do, actually. I think Exxon actually has that scheduled in. Some companies may be different. But as it relates to how they handle it, I guess that's sort of their concern. I just think that we as a province had to make sure, again, I think it already is. I'm sure Minister Cody's shop has this all, factored in. In this case, the concern became it was happening a lot sooner than what had been anticipated.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Minister Joyce.
Thought I was here to bear witness.
Mr. Minister Reagan, what's your reaction to the news last night?
Relieved. I've spent a lot of time, as I know the Premier and the Minister have, speaking to Dave Mercer and two members of his union, and there were a lot of people who have been incredibly anxious over these past few days and months. The $400 million that we announced last year, $395 million, 75 million of that is dedicated to emissions reductions, but 320 was for workers and emissions reductions. And that has been our priority, so that I've been keeping in touch with them just to see how they're doing. And, speaking to him last night, that just the sound of relief in his voice, and I'm sure the people that he's hearing from, it's huge. And I'm very proud of the province. I think that there is a clear understanding now in this province of what we have and how we value it. And it allows us, I think, to sit at the table, allows them to sit at the table with a great deal of confidence.
Will any of this money go to emissions reductions? The $205 million that comes from the federal fund?
It may. That's really up for the province. The parameters on the full 320 was workers or emissions reductions. So I'll leave it to the parties at the table after that. But we established the guardrails. And, one thing that I feel very strongly about, having written speeches about it in this place for, 25 years ago, is the Atlantic Accord is very important. I mean, the Charter of Rights, I had almost described the Atlantic Accord as our Charter of Economic Development in this province. And one of the very important things about it is that, as it is Newfoundland and Labrador's resource. The closer that we can get to making sure that people on the ground make the decisions about that resource, the better the resource will be managed. So it was important that not only were we giving $395 million, but authority to the province to make those decisions on the ground. They quickly established a table with workers and with industry in order to get their ideas, and I think, we're seeing the fruits of that now. But it's been a heck of a couple of weeks. There's no question about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.